I think in the modern world, since a lot of the spirituality has been secularized, what I like about the Hizmet movement is that it's a spiritual movement, but it also is attempting to help humanity unite. My name is Dr. Gerald Grudzen, and I live here in San Jose. I've lived here for over 30 years now, and I teach at San Jose City College and Gulen College and online for the University of Phoenix. These are undergraduate institutions, but I also am president of Global Ministries University, which is an international graduate program in theology and interfaith studies. Well, I've been involved with the Hizmet movement for about 5 years now. And I'm very impressed with the work of the Hizmet movement, both here in the United States, in Turkey, and in other parts of the world, such as in Kenya, which I'm very much familiar with because I've been meeting with them and collaborating with them. We've done a variety of projects together, including I've traveled with them to Turkey, and we've done a retreat program here in the Bay Area with the Hizmet movement, bringing together Christians and Muslims. So I think the interfaith work of the Hizmet movement and its charitable work, educational work, is a model for almost any religious group in the world today. I would say that the most significant aspect of the Hizmet movement is its interfaith work. We live in a world that is segregated by different types of classes, groups, religions, and in order for humanity to understand that we're linked together as one family, we need to reach beyond our denominations and realize that we all share a common humanity and a common spiritual principle. And I think in the modern world, since a lot of the spirituality has been secularized, what I like about the Hizmet movement is that it's a spiritual movement, but it also is attempting to help humanity unite. It's not fundamentalist in the sense of some religious groups. It's reaching out, it's joining together, and it's doing service. So Hizmet means service. I think Hizmet movement is probably has the greatest outreach of any Muslim movement today in the world. You are in over 100 countries. I've visited some of your schools. I've been to Bangladesh, I've been to Kenya, I've been to Turkey, and I've been to schools here in the United States also. So I think that this outreach you're doing is actually bringing humanity together in a way very few other movements can. So the focus of the Hizmet movement on education in particular, I think, is very encouraging, and I'm hopeful that we can spread this movement, particularly in developing countries like in Africa, where it's a young population and education is the key to overcoming some of the sectarianism that we find in the world today. Sectarianism divides people. The Hizmet movement and what Mr. Gülen is inspiring is uniting people around spiritual ideals. And I like the idea in your schools that you don't really teach religion directly, you teach ethics. And I think that's another hopeful sign that out of this spiritual movement, you're bringing people together of different religious, cultural backgrounds, but they're uniting around a certain kind of ethical principle of love and care for humanity and service of humanity. If we can all share that ideal, then there's a very positive future for humanity. If we don't do that, then I think it's not as encouraging for the future. But I think you have done so much already, and I'm hopeful that you can continue to expand your movement. Here in San Jose, I've been part of several interfaith conferences we've done with the Hizmet movement, one at Santa Clara University, We did one on Sufism at City College. So these interfaith programs that the Hizmet Movement sponsors, and I've been part of several of them. I went to the one in Chicago that we had, for example. I've been to Houston also. Basically, they help to clarify what unites different religious traditions rather than separates them. So the idea of interfaith, which tries to show, for example, common ideals, common principles that different religions share, such as love of your brother and sister, the golden rule, the idea of nonviolence as an ideal that pretty much every religion has. That these are some of the common themes that come out in these interreligious dialogue programs. And people begin to feel, well, maybe there isn't such a big gap between my Muslim friends in my neighborhood and the Christians down the street. We all share a lot of the same ideals. We may practice different rituals, we may have different ways to pray, but when it comes to the way we act toward each other, when we come together in interfaith programs, like I mentioned the retreat program we had, we actually appreciate even more what we have in common. And so this has taken different forms, and I think the more we can do this, the better it is for humanity. I like the schools very much because I know some of the schools are even in inner city areas. Many of the schools are obviously interfaith and intercultural, so they bring young people together. And one of the things that is very clear when I visited some of the schools is a sense of commitment that the students have to these ideals, but also to science and math education. Many times, particularly in developing nations, the students do not have strong background in science and math. I like the idea of the Olympiads that you do, where you bring together the students and they show their skills in science and math. Because if these developing nations are going to progress almost any part of the world, you need strong science and math curriculum. So these are not just parochial schools teaching. They're not even teaching religion. They're teaching usually ethical ideals, but they're also giving the students the skills they need to be successful in the world, and a lot of self-discipline. I like the fact that also the teachers that teach in these schools bring a lot of commitment to the students. So the schools are models from ones I've seen of success. So most of these students go on to become very successful in their lives, and also good people. So you emphasize both becoming a good person, but also having the skills you need to function in the modern world. So I see the Gulen schools as similar to the parochial schools that I went to growing up, as a Catholic. So I think there's a role for these types of schools, and they play a big role in helping to bridge the gap between, particularly in low-income areas. I've noticed that there's also an emphasis upon recruiting students from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and I think that's a very encouraging thing too. When I went to Turkey, I visited the relief organization and saw the work that they're doing in different parts of the world. They gave us a presentation. And I know the organization started at the time you had the big Turkish earthquake. So I think any religious group or spiritual group has to be involved in charitable work. And I know that's part of one of the pillars of Islam is doing charitable work. So yes, that's, and I know that, for example, the Hizmet movement has been in many parts of the world, not just in Turkey. So this idea of philanthropic work, of raising funds when there's need for disasters in any part of the world, is part of our obligation as religious people, as spiritual people, as part of the human race. And I think you're become a model of that also. So in many areas, I think you're active and doing good work. I visited some of your work even as far away as Bangladesh, where you have schools there and doing projects there in a very poor country. In Kenya, you're active. So you just don't go to developed parts of the world. You're involved in all parts of the world where there's need, and I think that's wonderful.